If you have shoulder impingement and feel pinching pain in the shoulder when you reach overhead, you might think you'll never be able to press weight overhead again. But I'm Dr. Davis and I'm going to teach you how to heal your shoulder impingement fast so you can return to the activities that you love as quickly as possible. Don't let pain get in your way. Let's talk about why shoulder impingement happens. Basically, your shoulder joint is a ball and a socket. And as this ball rotates upwards when you reach over your head, there's this big bony bump on the edge of it called the greater tubercle. And this bony bump, over it, there's this muscle called the supraspinatus muscle, represented by my finger right here. And if I reach overhead, you see how my finger gets pinched in between the greater tubercle and the acromion process. So these two surfaces come together and pinch this space right in there. And that's what we call impingement. And when you reach overhead and you have a load, a heavy weight overhead pressing down on your shoulder, that weight is taking your humerus, your arm bone, and pushing it into your body and jamming up this area right here. So that sounds kind of scary, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Things get impinged all the time. Impingement basically just means that stuff is getting squished. But look, even if I bend my finger, the stuff on the front of my finger gets squished, and it's not a big deal. So why is it a big deal if your shoulder is impinged? Well, it's not a big deal, but it is really irritating, and it can be painful. So let's try to work around that and get you back to non-painful overhead ranges of motion. Let's figure it out. So if compressive loads overhead, holding a weight and reaching it overhead, takes this ball in the socket and this greater tubercle and the acromion process, and as we pinch them, it jams it in. So the compressive load kind of worsens the compression. Well, that doesn't mean you can't do anything overhead. Maybe we can start with decompressive loads on the shoulder. Let's check it out. Let's take step by step how you can heal your shoulder impingement. Well, first of all, let's talk about space in the shoulder joint. If you take your thumbs and you point them down, reach your arms out to the sides, okay? Out to the sides. Thumb points down. If you try to reach overhead like this, you're probably gonna feel pinching pain in the shoulder joint. And you probably can't reach all the way overhead because there's just no space. But if you do this opposite and you turn your thumbs to point up and then you try to reach over your own head, suddenly we've created space in the joint and now we have more freedom of motion as we reach overhead. And there's another way that we can get more range of motion and space in the joint when we reach overhead. Instead of reaching overhead from sideways position, you might feel more pinching here. Let's try reaching either straight forward and up or kind of at a diagonal. We call this scaption, which is just movement of the upper arm bone in the scapular plane. And that's because if we look at this skeleton here, the shoulder blade here is actually at an angle. It's not straight out to the side and it's not facing forward. The scapula faces at an angle. So if we look at this person this way, basically the shoulder blade faces kind of diagonally, and it's not quite forward and it's not quite sideways. So if we reach the shoulder overhead in a diagonal plane, then we have the most joint surface contact and the least pinching. So maybe for now, scaption is going to be the easiest option on your currently sensitive shoulder. So step 1, every single day, I want you to use all the range of motion that you can to get yourself overhead with just body weight. So we'll start in this scapular plane, thumbs pointing up, and I just want you to slowly reach overhead. If you get to a point where you feel pinchy pain, then that's fine. That's as far as you go for now. But you just do this 3 sets of 10 every single day. So if this is as far as you get, that's fine. If you can get all the way overhead and there's no pinching, great. Do that 3 sets of 10 every single day. Just get used to getting your arms overhead in the first place. Eventually that's gonna be way too easy, and then we're gonna need to do something more difficult. So step number 2, instead of trying to do weighted exercises and press something overhead that leads to a compressive force on my shoulder, we can take our arms overhead and then add a distractive or decompressive force to the shoulder. Just passive hangs are a great way to get started. You don't even have to use your full body weight. I can take my hands overhead to a bar and then I can place my feet on the ground and just bend my knees a little bit and get used to some stretching decompressive force in the shoulders. Hang here for 30 seconds, then give yourself a break. Then do that 3 times a day. Now, if getting your arm completely overhead is still too pinchy, we can do something a little different. So here I'm taking a band and hanging it from a bar, And what I can do is I can start to reach overhead. Now again, if reaching all the way overhead is too much, then we can just lean back here and then grab this and pull it down. And we can do sets of 10. So 3 sets of 10 a day is a really good place to start. Now, once this becomes too easy, then we try to do this more truly overhead, where I'm reaching all the way up and then all the way down. And then once that's too easy, we want to grab a thicker band. And once that's too easy, we want to work our way towards hanging with our knees completely hovered so I'm not supporting myself. And once that's too easy, well, I guess you have 2 options. You can either get a lat pull down machine, which I can't demonstrate here, or the other option is chin-ups. And yes, I do mean chin-ups, not pull-ups, because my hands are facing me. That externally rotates the arm. And as we showed earlier, if your thumbs are internally rotated, you don't have any range of motion overhead. If they are externally rotated, suddenly we have tons of range of motion overhead. So palms facing you for a chin-up is a great option. And then finally, step number 3. Now we can add a compressive load overhead. Once you can do all of the previous steps with no pain, it's time to get some light weights and just practice reaching overhead. Your elbows can point kind of forward instead of going straight out to the sides. You're probably gonna get pinching out here, but if you point your elbows a little bit forward, you might be able to reach overhead with some weights. And then get slightly heavier weights and just get used to it. Again, 3 sets of 10 most days of the week is a good place to start. Don't force it, but eventually, if you give it enough time, you can progress to really dynamic activities. But if you force it and pinch it and pinch it and piss it off, then you will have a bad time and you won't be able to progress to these more dynamic activities. In other words, rehab is about taking it slow, taking it 1 step at a time, and having patience, but also having the understanding that you can rehab your shoulder. You don't have to deal with this pain forever. You're not doomed to having this sensation of pinching pain forever. You can get over this. You can get strong. You are resilient. Motion is lotion. I will see you in another video.